And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Reflections of Gaia, a unofficial anima podcast. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me, I have two of my good brothers here in the temple. We have our three-eyed master of puns made of liquid walk, good brother Joe,
Hello, everyone.
and the man losing arguments with himself, good brother Hydra.
Come on, Middle. Just because you got your belly full doesn't mean you get to nap now.
So we've long since finished covering the TTRPG, the bulk of this, and the very interesting miniature war game, which at some point in the future I may visit for either Board Game Gauntlet or just a TTS stream. I think it might be a interesting experiment. But now we have the card game entry, and one might think, oh, we're dealing with a TCG. No. This is an adventure card game that was self-contained over 3 episodic adventures. Hence the title of this episode, the Omega Saga. Now, this particular project started with the Shadow of Omega, then moved on to its sequel, Beyond Good and Evil, and its threequel, Twilight of the Gods. I have called it an adventure card game because it is both cooperative and competitive at the same time, and is more about playing objectives and completing them. I can't really make a comparison between Magic the Gathering or similar TCGs, because that's not really what it's doing here. This feels like an adventure board game in card game form, complete with its own little tokens, although they're not really tokens in the traditional sense, as well as the fact that you're only going to be rolling usually a single D6. Part of me wishes it was a D10 just for the sake of consistency with the other things, but that would create more problems than it solves, honestly. And the canny among you will know that I did cover this in Board Game Gauntlet a few months ago. This was also another episode of Monk picking on Calic once again, this time calling him a Otome protagonist. You know, much like what happened with Mike Shell all those years ago, I don't go out of my way to pick on certain people at the gaming table. It's just some people do things.
They do things that sometimes they deserve it.
Yeah. And in other times, it's just a classic case of feeding me.
Timor?
Do I look like a plant to you? Don't answer that.
No, you look like a monk.
At some point, some probably said you shoot up like a weed.
That was a long time ago. But obviously, obviously showing all of the cards for the Anima trilogy would get a bit redundant. And as far as what the hell Omega is in terms of Anima, it is another one of those things that should not be. Like a lot of the many, many things that showed up during the War of God. And as I kind of mentioned at the start of this series, there is no shortage of apocalyptic threats within the world of Gaia and beyond it.
It would be a pretty boring world if we did have a shortage.
And it's not always the same source. there are multiple potential things that could be a world-ending cataclysm. Uh, and a big part of the design setup with this particular card game trilogy is not far removed from, I'd say, games like Talisman, or basically card games where the goal is more on objectives rather than on trying to beat your opponent.
It beat the opponent. That's what tactics is for anyway.
Mm-hmm. I think there was an attempt to make a TCG within the Anima server. I was going to be part of the tournament for it, but I had to back out due to double booking. But of course, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that the Omega trilogy is once again another case of giving an excuse to look at more of the art of Lewis NCT, Esmolero, and Wen Yu Lee, especially the latter.
I mean, can you really blame us?
Mm-hmm.
This shit is gorgeous, man.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people got into Anima through the art by Wen Yu Lee. I'm no exception. But the other thing with these particular card game projects is each of them was pretty low cost. I think they only cost like $15 or $20 each. And in a roundabout way, it served as the launching pad for the Silver Line subline of board and card games that Fantasy Flight was doing in the late 2000s and early 2010s. Things like there was a Space Hulk version, there was a Blood Bowl version. I think there were a few other of these very light games that only cost $20 each. And given the amount of replay value for that, that's kind of a steal. Especially around that time. Now, I do want to read off the the story pitch within the rulebook for Shadow of Omega, because that was the first episode of these three.
Uh-huh.
After being sealed centuries ago, deep within the tower at the end of the world by the powers in the shadows, the ancient entity known as Omega is about to break free. To do so, it is collecting souls within the Infinity Orb, an artifact capable of altering the very rules of creation itself. Every time one of the chains that holds Omega is broken, the natural order of Gaia is disrupted and unexplainable catastrophes occur all over the world. The whole planet may eventually fall into chaos. However, a brave few have begun to make their way through the world, adventuring without any clear objective. Though unaware of their destiny, they are the only people who can stop Omega's resurrection and the terrible destruction it will cause. It is up to you to gather a group of these adventurers, control their powers and abilities, and return the Infinity Orb to the nothingness from whence it came.
And don't confuse the Infinity Orb with the Infinity Gauntlet.
Mm-hmm. But, you know, Omega in this is not far removed from the way Omega is treated in some of the Final Fantasy entries of just this super boss that you should not handle lightly. And
yeah.
Now, obviously, it makes perfect sense that the powers in the shadows would be tied to something like the Infinity Orb and tied to sealing Omega. Because remember, everything is Imperium's fault, even when it isn't.
That is Rule 0.
And the idea of this kind of thing being able to mess around with the natural order, as mentioned before, in the pre-Shadows era of the world that was, before it became before it became Gaia, there were a lot of weapons, beings, and the like that should not exist. And I know it's whenever there's these kind of things in stories, the temptation is there to say, "Oh, why didn't they just try and kill the thing at outright instead of sealing it?" A lot of times in these instances, the answer is very simple. They tried, it didn't work. And I know there's the meme that more cynical people have made about, a console RPG is just killing God with the power of friendship. I call it cynical because that's what it is. It's been talked about in the past, but what that really is a representation. The God in that is a representation of ultimate fate. And of course, there's going to be that kind of escalation, but I notice people don't have that same energy for when you have Demon Kings as the final boss in, say, Dragon Age. Or the fact that the dragons in that are referred to as old gods. You know, it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing going on there. But Shadow of Omega claims to only need a minimum of two players. From my experience, it is the kind of game that works better the more people you have playing it. The idea is every player starts with one mission they have to accomplish, and when that is done, then the final mission of the particular campaign is revealed. The first person to finish the final mission wins the game.
Sounds like the classical board game trope. Be the first to complete.
Mm-hmm. You're trying to complete your own individual mission so that you unlock the final mission. Once the final mission is up, that is the case. Though they have to choose to reveal the final mission, and they may not want to. There is a heavy amount of bluffing within it. On the other hand, once it's revealed, it has to be a priority thing to deal with within a certain number of time. And if that time runs out, anyone who hasn't beaten at least one basic mission is immediately destroyed, and anybody left over has one chance to deal with the adversary for that final mission or be destroyed themselves. So you do have to play the objective and deal with a time thing. Now there are different cards to account for, and I kind of wish I could show individual ones, but I can only do that to a point. But you have the character cards, for instance, which there's only really two stats that you have to worry about. The combat value, which is going to be used for combat checks. The speed value, which is going to be used for speed checks. Some effects will be gender specific, which did cause a controversy with some folks in a few of the old forums for very stupid reasons. This was in the same category as some people bitching about some of the art. And also whether or not it has any of the three main skills: Ki, Magic, or Trickery. Psionics doesn't play a factor in this one. Probably because it'd be difficult to discern it from the other two. And some have their own special abilities, and this was one thing that I remember you laughing about earlier. Uh, some effects require you to what they call spin the character, but let's be honest, it's tapping. They just can't call it tapping because if they do, they're going to get sued.
Yeah, they're gonna get Watsied on.
Mm-mm.
And this game came out when?
2005-ish. Give or take a few years.
So they
So what's
literally
it?
can't call it tap.
So basically, Watsy was being, well, Watsy even just 20 years ago. Nice.
Oh, Watsy's
No.
Watsiness is nothing new.
Because Magic is old.
Mm-hmm. But although admittedly, I think my favorite ultimate form of tapping in terms of the name that was used was in the L5R card game, where you bow a card.
Cute in its own way.
Now, even though while spinning a character, you can't use their effect again for that turn. That doesn't mean they don't participate in checks. So if you're called to do a combat or speed check, it's still added to the total. But the next type of card is areas. These are the green cards you see. These are parts of the world of Gaia, and consist of two things: the exploration table, which is on the side of the card, as well as a reward, which is at the bottom. And sometimes they have their own special rules. There is also a difficulty level of areas to keep in mind. This is usually 1, 2, or 3. And the idea is you have to, when you're exploring, you have to roll on the table and then play out the amount of encounters. Some areas will be tied to certain missions, and so on. And whenever you fulfill the exploration, you can choose one of the rewards. Some of the rewards are mission specific. Other areas allow you to trade, where you could trade advantage cards, which is one of the core things in your hand that's going to be. And of course, with the idea of mission cards, there are two versions of it. There's one with a blue background and one with a red one, like you see on the stream. The red ones are final missions. The final mission is always kept secret until one person has fulfilled their primary mission. Once that happens, now each player has 2 missions that they can fulfill. So you have 2 different opportunities to unlock the final mission. And yes, you can take further missions and get further advantages, but ultimately you're trying to complete a mission to unlock the final and complete that to win. But going at it as quick as possible isn't the best idea, because you may run into situations like combat checks that you have not nearly enough of a party to actually accomplish. Especially since the combat and speed values rarely go above 5 for individual characters. And you might be dealing with checks that are in the high teens or low 20s in final missions. But the main type of cards that you'll have in your quote-unquote hand are advantage cards. That is the gold one that you see. This can take the form of ability cards or plot cards. With ability cards, these are always tied to one of the 3 skill types I mentioned before: Key, Magic, and Trickery. If it's tied to one of these, you have to spin a character in your party that has that skill. So if you want to use a key effect from an advantage, you have to tap a character that has it. Plot cards are the exception. They do not require you to spin a character. A lot of these are akin to instants or one-off sorceries. So having a large party is going to give you multiple advantages. A higher ability to pass checks, as well as the option to utilize advantages if need be to mess with people. There's also a special subtype of plot card in this form of organizations. Organizations, you can only activate one of them. You can only join one party. It gives a set of abilities and also imposes certain requirements. And of course, you can only belong to one organization at a time. If you want to join another one, you have to drop the one you got. And if your party is in the same area as a rival organization, you have to fight them.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
But the big part of moving adventures forward is through encounter cards. These are the red ones. These will take the form of either a creature you have to fight, which means passing a combat check. The target number for it is going to be in this red corner of the card. Or it's an event that you just have to resolve. And whenever a new area is revealed, it generates a preliminary encounter. This is basically a gatekeeper to unlock that area. So if you're going into that area, you have to resolve that encounter, and then you can do explorations within that area. But there is a kind of phase setup where you have the reset, so everybody's starting out. Movement, where you can move to new areas or try and what's known as seek new horizons, but only one player can do this each round. Seeking new horizons is generating a new area, and by generating a new area, you also generate a new preliminary encounter. And several of these decks, area, encounter, character, and advantage, are in these shared neutral spots on the table. What's funny is when looking at the revised version, there wasn't a guide on how to place the decks, so we just had to improvise. But when it comes to doing combat, you roll a d6, add up the combat values of your party, check the target number. If you're up against another player, it's a contested roll. If something calls for a speed check, it works the same way. So I think that's why it went with a d6, so that if it was a d10, you might have cases where you get bailed out by the luck of the dice. But here, the dice are a nudge, but you can't rely on it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. There's also an optional rule for a kind of tree structure. Because areas are divided into difficulty level 1, 2, and 3. The idea with the tree structure as an optional rule is you have all of the area cards in like a pyramid shape. Level 1's at the bottom, level 3 is at the top. if you're outside the tree, you can only enter level 1 areas. Once you're in an area, you can move to the same level or one greater or lesser. Each time you move up or down a level, you draw a preliminary encounter. If you're defeated, i.e., you lose a combat check, you're expelled from the tree, and you got to start right at the beginning with a level 1 area. There are exceptions, like the advantage card Zeppelin Voyage, which lets you move to any area and not trigger that.
Good luck with that one.
Mm-hmm. And funny thing is, for as much as I've been talking about it, the rule set is pretty light. The core book for Shadow of Omega is only 16 pages.
Well, it also makes the carrying around in a box so much more easily.
Oh, the box is small. I would break this game out regularly at cons or sometimes at schools where we had nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Even if this got me in trouble in some places that had a no card playing policy. So, after going with the punishment of that, I decided I'm going to be a smartass. And brought in a copy of Yahtzee. Because they said no card playing. But Yahtzee is a dice game. So I am technically correct.
Which is the best kind of correct.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And after a bit now, the revised edition of Shadow of Omega, which had a different art, as well as the Crisis endgame rule. The main thing that was added was just better support, some errata that was put in, and just a general overhaul. There was also an ad in the back of the rulebook for the role-playing game, but they forgot to translate it. Which, this kind of thing was relatively common around that time. There's a lot of errors with the translation of the TTRPG that I didn't cover. And, of course, there was also the problem of Core X set never getting translated, despite being referenced in the X set expansions.
Yeah, Carlos, am I able to go ahead at the very least give us that?
I know people have been hoping for something new with the TTRPG for years, so exercise patience.
I barely exercise at all.
Mm-mm.
And patience is a limited quantity.
I mean, I could find a whole bunch at the local hospital, but that's a bit of a drive.
Mm-hmm. But the opening crawl for Beyond Good and Evil goes, "Everything ended. Omega, the ancient entity that threatened to disrupt all life in Gaia, had finally been sealed. Its unlimited source of power, the Infinity Orb, was shattered, and the splinters scattered so they could never be rejoined. Then humanity continued forward, confident that gravest danger had passed. At least that's what everybody thought. However, the orb was merely a key, and its destruction was the masterstroke of the plan devised by a force unknown until now. At this moment, something alien is slowly creeping into the world through fragments of the orb, waiting to manifest itself completely. This malign influence corrupts all that comes into contact with these fragments, as the very pillars of reality are altered. Whatever it is, if it is successful, Gaia will sweep into a fate much worse than any mankind could imagine. Aware of its coming, ethnically and morally different forces are making secret preparations to stand against this unknown power. It's up to you to play them, control their abilities, and stop the approaching final horror. It's time to go beyond good and evil. Hey, it's a better sequel than we're gonna get from Ubisoft.
True.
Gotta love it when they name drop.
Mm-hmm. But Beyond Good and Evil was the first expansion, but it can be played standalone just as well. On the other hand, you can combine them, and they did add in a 10-sided die as well. But the rule set remains the same. Finish a basic mission, then finish the final mission to finish the game. This was also the first introduction to the crisis rule when it came to the final mission, which would be back adapted into the revised version of Shadow of Omega. But while you can combine the sets, it is advisable to not combine all the cards at once, because the mission cards from Shadow of Omega are not compatible with area and event cards from Beyond Good and Evil. In addition, if you're doing a combined setup, they advise do not use the mission cards from Shadow of Omega. And if you want to use the mission cards from Shadow of Omega, don't use the ones from Beyond Good and Evil.
So it's one or the other.
Mm-hmm. One or the other, but a lot of the other stuff can be. Still used interchangeably. So things like advantages, characters, encounters to a certain extent, can be used interchangeably. In fact, but it is advised to group them by category. So character, advantage, encounter, and area. Now, of course, character cards work the exact same way. Spinning works the exact same way, but Beyond Good and Evil also introduced a new category called arcane characters. These are characters that are much stronger than normal ones that require specific circumstances to get them. In order to even get them, you need to have at least 3 normal characters in your party. Then move into an area that allows recruitment. If there's the recruit reward, you take a card from the character deck and add it to your party. And in a recruit reward, you can add an arcane character, but you have to discard an advantage card as payment. They also can't be expelled during the reset phase, but they can be killed. And areas work the exact same way as before, so there's no real change on that. And same with missions, though they're in both revised and in Beyond Good and Evil, there is a subtype called resistance missions where you have to stay in one area for multiple turns. Think of it as doing the defend the hold from a wave. But advantage cards work the same way as they did before. But there are also a couple new add-ons that got somewhat back adapted into Shadow of Omega. Incidents, which are plot cards that you can use during the reset phase, and their effects last for the whole turn. And trap cards. Yes, I know. Make the jokes. I know you're thinking of them.
No. Low-hanging fruit and all.
When has that stopped us?
But that's the best kind. You've activated my trap card.
But
I got it on my system.
The idea with trap cards here is that it lets you leave events in an area that will benefit you or harm a rival. They are played during the reset phase by placing them face down over an area so that only the player who placed them knows what it is. It is inactive until a party present in the area at the end of their movement phase triggers it. These have priorities over incidents, and I guess you could say it's a way to screw over people who are going into an area to try and do exploration.
I mean, that's the purpose of a trap.
One minor thing that happened was organizations were retitled as factions. Actually, no, I take that back. Factions were an additional type of thing like organizations, but they don't overlap. You can belong to a faction and an organization. And get the benefits of both. But also the drawbacks. Because remember, several of these have rivals. But encounter cards
Indeed.
work the exact same way as before. The turn order works the same way as before. But one particular rule that was also back adapted during the reset phase is discard and expel, where you can discard any number of advantage cards or expel any members of the party, except arcane characters. And whoever has the least amount of characters may recruit any character that it's expelled, and whoever has the least advantage cards can pick up one advantage card discarded by everyone else. If there's a tie, neither of them can pick them up. Now, you cannot have more than 5 advantage cards, and if you were to draw another one, you can't. In addition, if you've got 4 characters in your party, you can't recruit any further ones. So that, which does address a bit of a problem that happened in the OG version, where people could have these massive hands and massive parties and just completely steamroll everything. But not only
This is how we used to play today. Yeah, before FAQs and errata was a thing all over the internet.
Well, errata's been a thing long before internet.
Just not as accessible unless you know where to go.
But a lot of the other phases don't change how they handle things. And the way to win is still the same. I should note if you lose a combat encounter, if it's by 5 or less points, nothing really happens. But the encounter that you got beat by just stays there. If you lose by 5 or more points, you lose a party member.
Alright, so there is some luck involved.
And there is still the tree rule. Which we already talked about, how you arrange the areas into a tree, and you can only move between the different levels. It does remove the randomness if you do this, but on the other hand, it also means you know exactly where you need to go. But one other optional rule that was put in Beyond Good and Evil is bringing back the open roll.
Explain sixes for everyone.
I think this was done so that it's clear that one of the early problems with the OG version of Shadow of Omega was steamrolling. or somebody who has enough advantages and um enough of a party can just make encounters completely trivial. Uh, and I think things like the open roll and the expel rules were a way to try and mitigate that steamroll problem. Because I do remember having parties of like 5 or 6 characters and just going through every single mission that I could. Or having somebody who had a massive advantage in hand size or party size to the point where you couldn't really fight against it because they had such a monopoly on their stuff. Or you'd have cases where you've got a bunch of stuff in in either your hand or the party that you don't need, but you can't get rid of all that easy. So, and I don't think this was meant to be a land grab kind of game. There are games that do that. I don't think this was ever intended to be such. And it would be funny if late game somebody has nothing but arcane characters.
That actually does sound rather interesting.
It wouldn't be easy to do, but in theory somebody could do it.
Well, there's a key word, in theory.
Much like how Alabama is a hypothetical champion.
Yeah, I'm not touching that one.
Wow.
What? You saw that thing with Indiana?
Uh-huh.
That was funny for me because I heard because everybody was like, "Why is Indiana here? They're gonna get stomped." And I knew better. Just remember the many expressions of Kurt Signetti.
Indeed.
Mm-mm. But the third entry in the trilogy, and hello there, brother A.
Sorry about.
No worries. I know you got you got pulled in. It is that time of year, and it is Easter Sunday.
Yeah, and like my sister got into a car accident a couple of weeks ago, so we've been trying to get all that squared away.
Oof. My sympathies dealing with the insurance company. I know how that
Oh no,
goes.
I'm not dealing with it. I'm just dealing with trying to make sure everybody gets to where they need to go.
Yeah. To catch you up a bit, we did talk a little bit about the original Shadow of Omega and some of the changes from the OG version to the revised version. Some of those changes first appeared in Beyond Good and Evil.
Okay.
And there was a significant attempt to address a steamroll issue that I remember the OG version of Shadow of Omega had. Where you could just get a massive ass party and make everything trivial.
Okay. Like
Basically,
Go ahead.
Basically, you pretty much just hoard everything you can and everyone.
But now, something that I did also bring up is I think Shadow of Omega also was the launch pad for the Silver Line subline of games from Fantasy Flight, which were meant to be lighter games that you could get around $20.
Sorry.
Shadow of Omega wasn't that expensive. Hell, even the starter sets for Tactics weren't that expensive. I remember getting those for 15 each.
Those were still metal models, right?
Yeah. And they did not cost me much. Now granted you were getting only 2 models in each starter set. But for like $15 to $25 depending on time for metal models, that's a far contrast from certain companies who want you to pay a mortgage for their models. Games Workshop.
Don't get me started.
And StarCraft.
Do not get me started. I will derail this entire episode.
And StarCraft, like, I've seen the prices.
I mean, the StarCraft is just going and copying Games Workshop.
I haven't looked at how I know that they've done battle report videos, but what I really want out of the StarCraft minis game is an actual booklet that I could read, so I could study how the game works.
I haven't ever looked into it other than the fact of
Actually,
just skimming through the models.
Actually, I figured they updated the website with the rules recently.
Yeah, if it's rules on a website, that's one thing, but I want a PDF that has the rule set. But the third part of the Omega trilogy was Twilight of the Gods. This was the last of the 3. By this point, the Anima card game had been firmly in the Silver Line family of games. And although the fun thing about this particular series of games is I could break this out just about anywhere. I would regularly break it out at cons, And with Twilight of the Gods, since I read off the first 2, I may as well read off the opening scroll for the third one. And existence itself cried. They failed. On that day, despite the combined efforts of the greatest powers of Gaia, no one was able to stop the coming of the final horror. The unnamed nightmare took physical form and altered the very pillars of reality. Gods fell, ancient powers rose, and the entire world was swept to the edge of destruction. The entity now feeds on the power of the dead gods, devouring their essences to consume all of existence and create a new one in its own image. And we lost Joe. Conscious of the ultimate danger, everyone with the strength necessary to face the entity has emerged from the shadows. Now it is up to you to play them, to control their incredible abilities and stop the thing that should not be. The time of the final struggle is at hand, the Twilight of the Gods. And in both the second and third expansion, it is kind of funny that they started adding in things like the open roll and adding in a 10-sided die.
Yeah, I'm skimming through the documents now. It is weird they did have like 6-sided dice for so long. Since even both the war game and of course the tabletop game used 10-sided dice.
I think it's due to the way the checks work in relation to parties, and not wanting the die to be able to bail you out. On the other hand, it's a lot easier to get an open roll here than it would be in either the RPG or the war game.
I mean, you say that, but I had somebody in my party whenever I played the RPG that commonly open rolls up to 500 to 600 regularly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'll rephrase that. It is tricky to get something like an open roll in the war game because of how it works.
Mm-hmm.
In the RPG, you've technically got a degrading 10% chance, and in this particular card game, it's a 1 in 6 chance. So a 16% chance. So if I have to be real technical about it and real pedantic, it is easiest to get it in this card game. I also brought up the fact that it was an interesting move to do this kind of adventure card game setup that's built on missions instead of a traditional TCG. And that may have been a smart move in the long run.
When did this come out? Because I know Pathfinder did a similar system with their card game as well, where you have you have areas, and then the character or your characters will go to those areas, and they have to hit certain DCs.
2006.
Okay.
At least for the. I'm not sure if that's I'm not sure if that's the case with the original edition. The revised edition came out in 06. I think the OG version came out in 04 or 05. Actually, no, I take that back. The original version came out in 06. The revised edition came out in 09. And
okay.
I think because of that, this does predate the Pathfinder adventure game.
Probably. You're probably right. All I'm seeing is stuff from 2019, and I know for a fact the card game was older than that.
Yeah, let me... Thank God for Board Game Geek in times like these. So there's that core set from 2019. Let me... I think we're looking at the same thing. I was about to say, I know that I saw that. I know that I saw a PC port of this thing before 2019.
Absolutely, I have it. I can tell you when it came out. It came out on Steam, at least.
Mm-hmm. The Pathfinder wiki says that it made its debut at Gen Con Indy in 2013.
Okay. So, like, it still predates it.
Yeah. The Rise of the Rune Lords base set was August 2013, supposedly. The core set was a Redux that was in 2019. And and I'm not sure when the digital adaptation was a year later. And by Obsidian of all people.
Look, people forget that Obsidian wasn't a development studio that just did one thing. They did a lot of side projects, or they supported other developers doing things. They only relatively recently became a big name.
Mm-hmm. Hey, whatever contract helps pay the bills.
True.
Although going back and looking at the way the Pathfinder card game worked, I do find it incredibly funny that the caster characters in that don't use that casting model that I hate. Probably because it would be really hard to do that in a card game.
Here, these cards represent your spell slots. And...
You know, I want to go. I want to make a tabletop RPG that it's just played with cards.
That's been done.
It's like it had to have been done. But it's like, oh, you want to play a paladin? Here's your paladin deck.
Yeah, that has been done. I've made a few attempts to do that myself, but I wasn't satisfied with the direction that it went, and it just kind of went into limbo. I may revisit that in the future.
The closest that I've seen was actually a board game. And it's less, here's your paladin deck, and more, here's your character who is a paladin deck. Now, everyone, time to gamble, because we're trying to drink each other under the table. It's called Red Dragon Inn. I absolutely love it.
That sounds like a Red Dragon Inn. Man, I want to play that again.
That would be fun just to see who could outdrink whom. Spoiler alert, it ain't gonna be me. I'm too weak to alcohol.
Well, I don't drink at all. Most of the family's a bunch of alcoholics, so I'm not gonna pick up that demon.
Look, if we need to do an alternative, I'll just get a 6-pack of the world's most sour soda, and we can work with that instead. Every time you lose a round, you have to take a sip of that.
If it's going to be sour soda, why not just grab a whole bunch of root beer, and at least we could all have fun that way.
Because the point is that you're trying to lose less. I said every time you lose, you gotta drink from it. Though it would be unfair because I know I've drank that thing and I'm like, oh, it's just a little sour. You have to remember my sour tolerance is completely screwed up. But when it comes to Twilight of the Gods, the same kind of independent, but also being able to cross-reference with the previous decks still applies. The only thing that you can't do is combine the mission cards.
I mean, that's definitely nice for newcomers who only just bought the recent expansions. At least they could just pick up and play.
Yeah, even though Beyond Good and Evil and Twilight of the Gods are expansions, they can be played standalone.
Which is nice. You don't run into the issue where I remember specifically for like Zoo Tycoon, I picked up the dinosaur expansion, not realizing I need the base game.
But
or other expansions for other games as well.
Yeah. But when it comes to Twilight of the Gods, there weren't a lot of brand new rules that we saw like we did with Beyond Good and Evil. It was just more of what it was already doing. And I think by that point it had settled into what it was trying to do. And hell, even the option, okay, I take that back. There was one optional rule that was added in for Twilight of the Gods, and that was the extended game rule, where you could ignore the crisis rule to make the game longer, i.e., until one player finishes the final mission, the game doesn't end, which was how things were working early on anyways. So I guess some people wanted that extended game and didn't want the time crunch of the crisis rule. Which, fair play, I guess. You are still gonna run the risk of steamrolling. And even though this can be played with 2 players, I've always felt that the best way to play the anima card games is with a full party of 4, or at the very minimum 3.
I mean, given how expensive just the world of anima is, all the different factions, organizations, and everything, you could pretty much have a little bit of everything.
The big reason I say I think this is better with multiple people is a bigger variety of potential missions, a bigger variety of advantages, and also the kind of mental game that you see with certain things. And I will note I was somewhat wrong with whether or not it added new things, because Twilight of the Gods added artifacts. These were special plot cards that, when it was played, it meant the party has access to a magic node. We kind of saw the node system a bit in Tactics as one of the ways to play. Much like with organizations and factions, a party can only have one artifact at a time.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, if you end up doing a bit of PvP and you win, instead of taking an advantage card from the player's hand, you could steal the artifact.
This belongs in a museum.
So, all right, time to channel our ender to what were they to
Yeah.
So, like, hypothetically, a party can get multiple artifacts if that's the case.
No.
That's it. We could let's all channel our inner blood ravens and just steal everyone's shit.
It's not stealing, it's just salvaging it off the battlefield. They were gonna return it at some point.
Right, right.
You know, the galaxy's a big place.
If you want, they make it clear, a player can only have one artifact at a time. If you want to replace it with another, you have to discard the one you currently possess.
Ooh, hiss.
You know, I mean, that you know, the player part of me, it's like, you know, that sucks. But as somebody it's like looking at it as a rule standpoint, it's like, yeah, I bet these artifacts are gonna be too powerful to just allow like the players to have multiple different artifacts at the same time.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, a problem with the OG version of Shadow of Omega was steamrolling. There wasn't a party limit, there wasn't really a hand limit.
That's an interesting choice.
It was one of those things that wasn't fully thought through. Or if there was a hand limit, I don't remember it. And Beyond Good and Evil introduced the expel rule with the reset phase, where you could discard players and advantages. Whoever had the least for each could take some of the ones that were discarded and add it to their side. If there's a tie, neither side gets it. You know, these kind of things are why I say the best way for this to be played is with the biggest group you can. Because you'd have the mental game of what you're going to give up and what you want to risk somebody taking, as well as whether or not you want to do a truce with one of the other players to screw over somebody else, even if there can only be one.
It kind of sounds like a game of Commander and Magic the Gathering.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
I can see the logic, but I'd like you to make your case.
To be honest, I've never been a big card game fan, so I just pull that out there through like cultural osmosis.
Pretty much I would have to go along with that line. Like, don't get me wrong, I do love a commander, but let's be frank, I'm an Esper guy, and everyone's always out to skin me before I screw them over.
But I don't want to be Frank.
No, you're stuck being TV's Frank.
Ah.
Okay, what kind of Frank though? Frank Castle?
No, TV's Frank from Mystery Science Theater.
Oh.
So I decided to look up the Commander format because I never played Commander format. So multiple players, longer game, larger deck. Deck size is 100.
And you can't have any duplicates, and yeah, everyone starts with a 40 life.
Mm-hmm.
You also have a commander that you can summon at any time so long as you have the resources to do so.
Yep.
Hence the name of the format.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what... I kind of want another tangent. What made like the commander format pop up? I know it's something that I don't think the designers thought of when they were making Magic.
So it started with... So it was back when everything was done in... I forgot the actual term of the format.
EDH,
like,
Elder Drunken
no,
Highland.
No. It's back when for modern play, you could only you only had a set rotation that you can pull from, and people wanted to play with their older cards. So they started coming up with extra formats where you could go legacy and pull whatever, and people at various tables would ban cards, etc., blah blah blah. And then someone came up with the singleton format, where it's like, hey, I don't want to play with proxies. I only have one of these cards. So I'm going to just do a single thing because it's going to be all I can do. And people saw that, thought, hey, I can do that better. They decided to make that an actual format. It always starts at one game store and it just evolves. That's how a lot of these Magic formats go.
Yeah, including formats that only showed up for a hot minute and then disappeared, like Pauper or Brawl.
And then like the two-headed giant format, which is a 2v2, we have shared life. Yeah, this will totally work.
I could see that being fun.
And then EDH, where it was a similar format. They restricted the deck size because you had the Goblin and the Elf players who brought their ridiculous sized decks and still made them work. And we all hated them for it.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, did they ever not fix in actual Magic the Gathering that you could just bring how many cards you want?
I think in actual tournaments, there is a maximum deck restriction, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah, I never done a tournament. I just played it for fun. Mm-hmm. Well, I say for fun, but I either played like blue, white, and black, or I play slivers.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, I see.
Even I know about sliver decks.
Greetings, fellow asshole. I too play slivers.
Slivers are the kind of thing that are a very reliable way to make sure that you're the first one that gets keelhauled.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you say that. But shapeshifters exist, which are arguably worse than slivers, because they can also be slivers.
Yes, this is true. This is true, however, for the most part.
So when someone says, I'm going to play my sliver deck, I'm like, okay, and I bring my 5-color shapeshifter deck. Hi, I'm playing changelings. What's that? Slivers? Cool, I'll benefit from that. I'll benefit from that. I'll benefit from that. Fuck you, I'm also playing blue. Counter. I'll benefit from that.
And don't be silly, considering that you only need one of every kind, that you could pretty much have half your deck be full of nothing but counter spells.
Anyway.
Yeah.
And don't get me started on my house always wins deck. In any case, we're getting outside of the topic.
Yes. So, I do think it was an interesting move to go with this kind of adventure card game setup, as mentioned earlier. And if I'm being honest, I think if they tried to do a traditional TCG in the mid 2000s, like in 2006, it would have flopped. 2006, we were starting to see the bubble burst when it came to the massive explosion of not just TCGs, but anime TCGs around that time.
Yeah.
I had a fair few of them, including a lot of the ones that Score put out, like the ones for Shaman King, the ones for basically any anime that was getting any measure of traction.
Shaman King, Yu Yu Hakusho, Dragon Ball Z.
DBZ one was what predated that, and it still was able to stick around through sheer momentum. A lot of them were very clutter heavy and very gimmicky. Especially looking at you, Shaman King. I mean, by the time Chaotic came around, the bubble had more or less burst. I know some people really liked Chaotic. I never got a chance with it.
Sorry.
But I mean, I know that there was the Anima TCG project in the Discord server, but I wasn't able to participate. Just due to schedule conflicts. And a setting like Anima could certainly lend itself to that sort of thing. But I feel like in doing that you'd end up stepping in the same territory as the war game. Which is why I think it was a smart move to not do that. Especially since if I'm being honest, if a Anima TCG was made in 2006, people would be making Magic the Gathering comparisons no matter what.
I bet they were making Magic the Gathering comparisons regardless.
Well, yeah, because some people have the brain power of a donut, and anytime you have a card game with high quality illustrations, people think, is this a Magic the Gathering ripoff or clone?
No, it's the new Universes Beyond.
I got in my fair share of trouble because I said the other Universes Beyond will not do as well as the Final Fantasy one.
Yeah.
You know, currently that is still true.
And I would not be surprised if in 5 years Hasbro comes begging to Square to do a new one.
I mean, like, that's pretty self-evident because they went like, hey, we're not just choosing a Final Fantasy, we're choosing all of the Final Fantasies.
Which got them shit for overrepresenting some of them more than others.
I mean, like, look, of course FF14 got in there a bunch. Of course 7 got in there a bunch. It's like it'd be stupid for them not to overrepresent at least the popular ones.
Yeah, and I'm certainly not giving shit for that. It is just a amusing observation. And the reason why I say a Anima TCG would step in the same arena as Tactics is both of them would have to be built around faction characters. And while that could certainly be done because of the dependence on resource systems in a lot of card games, I think it would create more problems than it solves. Because and truth be told, I think the card game that people would make comparisons to isn't necessarily Magic, but L5R.
Yeah.
The only way I could see a foundational pitch is the idea of you're playing as one of the factions on Gaia.
That sounds right.
But going with the idea of you are recruiting adventurers to do some sort of mission, almost like a wizardry game, I think sidestepped that problem. And obviously, with some of this, I'm purporting it. I'm going on my own speculations, but I think it's consistent enough to warrant it. And at the same time, it's I'd say it's just as much of a representation of what Anima was trying to be. Specifically the fact that Anima as a whole has a lot of love letters to console RPGs. It is baked into the DNA.
And it's a very well integrated DNA, considering that we pretty much have 3 different types of games just out of one setting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When I think of other settings that have done that kind of thing of being able to do multiple game formats in the same universe, the only as far as ones in an RPG background, the big one that comes to mind is like World of Darkness. I know it'd be tempting to bring up Warhammer 40k or BattleTech or the like, but those started as war games first and dipped into RPGs later.
Yeah, I see what you're getting at.
Versus this the prime element when we all first started learning about Anima was the RPG. That's the one that has the biggest amount of detail compared to the other things. It was always the crown jewel. Which is why I dedicated more episodes to that than anything else in this series.
And yet that is also the foundation of what we're here talking about, the card games now.
Yeah. I mean, hell, the original character cards in Shadow of Omega were just the 20 character classes in the TTRPG. Later on, they started adding in characters that certainly leaned into classes but weren't the original 20. And by the time we get to Twilight of the Gods, we've added full-on characters like good old Lucanor. You know, the would it be unfair of me to call Lucanor the Xanatos of Anima?
No, it wouldn't be unfair at all. It may be on point, or at least onto something.
And especially with his amount of scheming and the fact that both of them are well-off individuals with more money than sense certainly doesn't hurt. I'm certainly not going to give that disposition to Ra.
Oh, please, let's not.
That would be funny, though.
Mm-mm. But for example, one of the character cards from Twilight of the Gods was the Colonel, the leader of Les Jaeger. Which is its own beast that we covered in the past, and one of the characters in Beyond Good and Evil was, as I mentioned before, Lucanor. But also things like a agent that was very much affiliated with the Knights of Abel. And
I mean, given how bloody flexible, it wouldn't surprise me if there are probably fan-made cards of pretty much all the named characters, like the ones from Gates of Memory.
I tried to make my own fan cards myself. Didn't work. I wasn't skilled enough to pull it off.
Ildra, everyone, I do apologize, but I have to get going. I'm being summoned.
No worries.
All right.
Stay frosty, Joe. I will see you on Wednesday.
Take care, everyone.
Later.
Catch you later.
But I do know that a lot of the characters and the like that are in both the miniatures game and in the card game did have crossover with the RPG. And I distinctly remember that within the Those Who Walked Among Us expansion, which we only briefly covered, because a lot of it was just a lot of monsters. Omega did show up in that thing. It's just he is at a level that would probably not be easy to face. Like, his shadow is level 11.
I mean, sometimes like a setting has to have an atom smasher to end the campaign somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, indeed.
But the actual Lord of Infinity is level 16.
That's an interesting decision.
Mm-hmm. 16 and has its own set of key abilities. But the whole idea with Omega is clearly meant to be that ultimate hidden boss. And just going into what it ends up doing, it is, again, there's no shortage of things trying to end the world within Gaia, and during the War of God, there was no shortage of things that were far too powerful to exist. As much as people want to say that organizations like the Church are assholes for trying to remove all supernatural artifacts, some things they have a point on.
It's like you don't want a bunch of thermal nuclear warheads just laying around waiting for some like sheep farmer to accidentally stumble across.
A broken clock is right twice a day.
The funny thing about that is there was a missing nukes incident.
Yeah, it's those I know it's on the tip of my tongue. Those shards of Solomon or something.
Yeah, the 30 pieces of black metal, which is Imperium's biggest embarrassment, because every time they've tried to reclaim those, it ends up slipping through their fingers.
And remember, everything is the Imperium's fault.
Mm-hmm. But with that said, I know this was a light episode, and the 1 and 2 weeks might be light as well. But that will wrap it up for this look back at the Omega trilogy. Before we do our final closeouts, I know Joe had to leave early, but Hydra, what do you think of this look back at the card games?
Honestly, I actually adored the simple just grab and go and play the format of this game. Like you pretty much explained it, it's easy to just, all right, let's have fun, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect to kill time when waiting on something.
What about you, A?
I did just again, I'm sorry, family stuff. I did just kind of show up and skimming through. This is a very like Hydra said. It's like it's easy pick up, play, and then you can drop. I can definitely see why some people are like, hey, let's get rid of this like set like the get rid of the mechanic that will end the game after X amount of turns. Because some people would be like, hey, I want to play a game more than just a little bit. But it is nice, and I hope eventually we see more games pick up on this like corner of the market where it's like, hey, some folks don't want to spend 2 hours setting up and then another 2 hours like breaking it down.
Yeah, that was kind of the intent of the Silver Line series of games.
And then the fact that this game was really cheap as well is just an added bonus.
Yeah, obviously getting one now, you're gonna be paying a pretty penny since they've been out of print for so long. And
that's what the TTS is for.
Yeah. Now, this, as mentioned before, this is the penultimate episode of this particular series. When we come back in 2 weeks, we'll be doing the finale of this kind of retrospective by looking at the video games. Now, obviously, the most recent project is still in the works, and I'm not expecting that for a while, but the ones that are out, we can still discuss. That being Ark of Sinners, which unfortunately you can't play anymore unless you want to go through some extra hoops. Fucking WiiWare. And the Gate of Memories duology. So the original Gate of Memories, the Nameless Chronicles, and a bit of talk on their remasters.
That was such a nice gift to remaster the Gate of Memories games, but we'll save the talk for when we get to that particular episode.
I know I'm going to be in for some pain revisiting Ark of Sinners because it wasn't good. I know that there were a few hidden gems in the WiiWare run, but that was not one of them.
Yeah, I never played Ark of Sinners, so I'll take your word for it.
If you want a hidden gem from WiiWare, the Castlevania Adventure certainly fits that bill. But that's another story. So, until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.
Take care.
See ya.